what's next for policy.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you to all of you for staying for this last session. I really don't know why I was asked to talk about what's going to happen next. I must be one of the oldest people in the room, and somehow I don't think I'm going to even see what's going to happen next, let alone know anything about it. I work for the World Obesity Federation, which is an advocacy organization as well as a professional society, and I hope many of you in the room are actually members of your national obesity associations, and then you're members of us as well. And I have, I think, no conflicts of interest to declare. In order to look forwards, you have to look back a little. I think that was Epaminondas, the Greek philosopher, who walked backwards because he believed he could see where he was going by looking back. I just wanted to ask myself, firstly, what's been happening with television? Because we had a big flurry of interest in TV advertising back about 10 years ago, and promises from the industry that self-regulation would solve this. And for the next 8 years, we've been having self-regulation introduced over this region. As you can see, back in 2007, a high proportion of food advertising on children's TV was for high-fat sugar foods. 60% Greece and Italy, 80% in Germany, 90% in Bulgaria. More recent surveys, there's not been a consistent one looking across the region, but several individual surveys tell us that 60% of all TV food ads are for high sugar foods in Greece, 70% in the UK, dropped slightly in Spain, 52% compared with 56% a bit earlier, but they've got more ads overall, so 10 food ads per hour versus 6. So in fact, children are just as exposed, if not more so, than they were back in 2007. The timing may have shifted. It may not be during children's TV programming, but it is there. So I think self-regulation, if you were to ask me an opinion on that, is useless. The second thing is that we have for many years focused on children, and I could question that, but there are good reasons for focusing on children. They are vulnerable, they're persuadable, they are generally not held responsible for their actions. Parents are generally very protective of their children, so that gives you a political way in, because parents may act politically or vote to protect their children. Politicians like to show that they are fond of children because that gathers the parents' votes. And there is a general recognition that society has a duty to protect children. And virtually every country in the world now, I think, is a member, has signed up to the Convention on the Rights of the Child. I'm afraid the United States is one that has yet to sign. But there is this general understanding that children need protection. So working on advertising to children probably is the most successful way we can move forward. We needn't talk about it now, but I would argue that actually adults are almost as susceptible as children are, even as old as I. So, thinking about children and marketing to children, there are two clear competing interests. There's children's health and well-being, and this is the sort of advocacy positions that many of us organizations take. And then there's the freedom to market, the freedom of speech, which Kelly referred to, particularly protected in the United States, but generally protected, the freedom to market, highly protected across most of westernized economies. And in order to protect children's health in a context where there is a freedom to market, you need to have market justifications. You need to give economic reasons as well as health reasons for protecting children. And that can be quite difficult. So you have to show that children are not responsible for their own behavior, are not responsible for their choices, and economically are not independent actors. And I think we've managed to show that for gambling. We've managed to show that for gun control to some extent. For pornography, maybe. For alcohol, I think there is some move towards restrictions there, and certainly tobacco. And junk food, is that perhaps the next one on the list? Can we perhaps strengthen our attitudes towards junk food as we have to these other if you like, commercial interests. Gambling, guns, pornography, alcohol, big commercial interests. So the two approaches that have been taken by governments generally are either to consider absolute protection, so children have a right to freedom from commercial influence, freedom from inducements to unhealthy behavior. And there are not many governments have done that. There have been sort of attempts like Norway, Sweden, and the French-speaking regions of Canada, but it easily undermined by cross-border marketing and easily undermined by market economy arguments. So the alternative approach is called risk reduction, and for that you have to do an assessment of the risk, and then you have to manage that risk to try and reduce the harms. So to give some examples, on a rights-based approach, you simply take as granted that your first duty is to protect the child, you define the rights that they have, what sort of protection you mean, and you define what you mean by a child. Often enough that's to age 18, sometimes to age 21. With a risk-based approach, you have a different set of questions. Your first duty is perhaps protecting free speech or market freedom, so you then have to justify action by showing evidence of harm, and that's what we've been discussing a little, Emma particularly showing evidence of harm. And if you can show evidence of harm, you then have to define all the risks, because you're going to have to manage them. You're going to have to define with evidence what sort of foods, and that's a nutrient profiling model, what types of advertising, and I think we're yet to discuss properly the digital marketing, what times of broadcast, what sorts of media. So there are a number of dimensions that then have to be defined in a risk management basis. Okay. Just change the language a little. If you are a food producer, a food company, you have two types of advertising and promotion of your product. There's what's called above the line, which is basically advertising that they have to pay for. They buy TV slots, billboards, sports sponsorships, and purchased advertising on websites. These are like pop-up ads and ads on other people's sites. And then there's below the line, which is researching, designing, promoting the product in various ways, but not buying any advertising. So it could be brand development, company-owned websites, their own Facebook pages, their own social media and online games, retail displays, special offers, product designs and packaging. Product designs and packaging is one of the things I've long been interested in. Here's a nice, healthy product, nicely designed, full of colors, flavors, very attractive to look at. Here's a nicely designed product, colors, flavors, very attractive to look at. Similar flavors, of course. And here's another, and here's another. Product design is a form of marketing. It's the way in which products attract attention. In particular is the brand. And always remember that a company can't sell things unique to them and make a profit out of them if they haven't branded them and named them and said that they're ours. So they have to control that. With raw fruit, there's no branding. No individual company is owning those fruit and controlling the market. With products like these, Fruit Loops, there's specific branding where the company can control the price, the quality of the product, and so on. And we know that marketing and the design of products through this sort of marketing does have power, pester power. This ad is in fact from a trade magazine, Grocer, way back in the 90s. It was well recognized. Pester power works. So here's the child, I want that product, it's designed for me, you know, shapes of whatever it is, meat products, and pulling at the parent's arm, I want it. And embedding advertising in other activities and other products. So here's McDonald's being promoted by kids in a playground and in Barbie model material. Some of the skinniest dolls you will ever see. Promotion, of course, is also in the retail environment. Where it's placed, eye-level products are usually most popular level. But kids' eye levels, of course, matter. So if you're a child, you may not be advertised fruits and vegetables, but you will be advertised sweets, ice creams, soft, sugary products. And then floor level, this is really interesting. These are floor level, put your hand in and grab the sweets. I think they're designed for children in buggies, in pushchairs. Because no adult, certainly not at my age, can get down there and reach these things. And it creates, of course, the argument, a real area of tension. This is where the child and the adult with that child is going to have a terrible argument when they get to the checkout. And it's an argument that shouldn't be occurring between a parent and a child. It's an argument between public health and companies. Okay, now, really, we're supposed to be talking about digital marketing, and I've only got a few minutes left. It's hard for parents to monitor. We know that. Even though these advert games put a little parents button that tells them, oh, really, you know, it's up to you to control what we're putting on this website. Even though you get these, here's Kellogg's again, Fruit Loops, games on the sites with, this may contain a product or promotion. Remember, you should get your parents' permission before you do anything, blah, blah, blah. It's complete discharging of responsibility, pretending that it's not, that they had nothing to do with this site somehow. You know, it's all up to you if you go there. And Kellogg's are signed up to the International Food and Beverage Alliance. We don't advertise to children under 12. I think this is very interesting for children under 12. And they've actually admitted down in the corner there that this is advertising from Kellogg's. So, you know, again, self-regulation, no way. Hard for parents to monitor. Very easy to reach children privately. In the last survey I have here, and I think there's probably better data now, 4% of children under the age of 7 have internet access in the bedroom, 15% under the age of 11. Age 5 to 7, 1% have a smartphone. That's absolutely extraordinary. Children with a smartphone, age 7. 39% are using a tablet and 21% go online with the tablet. This is age 7, 6. Can't believe it. And then the third area that really is quite worrying is user-generated advertising. So examples here, you know, here's me eating some Doritos. No, not me actually. Someone in Canada. Yes, Doritos Canada. Posting their images online and with a branded image in there. And it's good fun, and everyone loves it. And it makes Doritos happy, and it makes us all happy. Here's, where are we now? Krispy Kreme Donuts stand, putting up on their stand, on their visual display, electronic display, pictures of clients coming in. So here are the parents and child, parent and child in front, but they're up there as well. Have I got a, no I haven't. Up there in the top right-hand corner, they've just had their photo taken and put on display. This is a curious thing, but it makes them happy. Krispy Kreme, happy, you know, what's the association going on there? And of course, loads of selfies in front of famous objects. So here's the Coca-Cola truck going around delivering free Coca-Cola at Christmas time. There's a Father Christmas at the back end of the truck, Father Christmas logo, you can see him there. And people taking selfies and posting it on the social media, putting Coca-Cola's brand in front of loads of people in a friendly, nice, happy way, without Coca-Cola having to do anything, except provide the truck, I suppose. Now, what's interesting is Coca-Cola says on their website, use of Coca-Cola trademarks, Coca-Cola logos, only used in conjunction with goods produced by Coca-Cola or with the express prior approval of Coca-Cola. Now, is that photograph a goods produced by Coca-Cola? No, it isn't. And for the avoidance of doubt, the Coca-Cola corporate logo may only be used by Coca-Cola. So, have you broken the law if you put up a social media picture? It would be up to Coca-Cola to prosecute you for trademark infringement. I don't think they will. Now, here's this is the classic example. Take a picture, put it online. This actually comes from the Coca-Cola's own website. So they are encouraging you to break their own trademark regulation. Ugh. Now, I'm nearly done. Australia. The Australian Advertising Standards Bureau say that brand-owned websites and brand-owned social networking pages, and of course a lot of companies are encouraging this selfies and these photos to be put onto their social pages owned by the company. These are marketing communications. Brand-owned websites, brand-owned social networking pages are marketing communications. And all content falls within the industry marketing codes, maybe voluntary, but sometimes legislative, including consumer-created content, such as user-generated messages and uploaded photographs. So, if you see an uploaded photograph on a company website, on their social media pages, which you think is breaking the industry marketing codes, go for it, because that's one of the few opportunities you have for trying to expose the cheap marketing that they are now doing. And I think there's an argument to be made that we could be extending to all openly available web pages that show any trademarks, logos, or copyrighted material. Companies should be required to actively prevent the use of their logos. That would put a stop to it. Wow, that would be really exciting. See Coca-Cola say, we're not allowing anyone to put up pictures of any Coca-Cola branded objects, images on any website, or we will prosecute you. Ooh. Just to finish, looking a bit further forward from internet and digital marketing, and not so much further forward but further outward, there are other forms of below-the-line product promotion or product defending that go on. So I've talked a little about product design and packaging and brand development. There are retail displays, advert games, user-generated marketing. Of course, there's a lot of lobbying and political party support. And if you're interested in those areas, come and have a chat with me, because this is what sort of thing that we have to, my organization, has to confront all the time. Press stories and attack blogs. Things are getting nastier out there. Discrediting, abuse, trolling, threats, having your emails hacked, having people join your society who are there for other reasons than they should be. There's a load of stuff that goes on beyond just the digital media that is quite pernicious. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. Does anyone have any questions?
Hi, Swati Kagankar from the Almond Board of California. Okay, so I basically wanted to say that all of the talks, including yours, have been very interesting and of course help increase the appreciation for the amount of work that needs to be done in this area. But I would like to play the devil's advocate just for a moment here and ask if this work is being done in collaboration with change makers or people in charge of policies in all different areas, or is it only in the digital media? So for instance, the reason why I ask this question is because if we look at, I completely understand the reason behind why kids would get influenced by this, and let's put kids aside for a moment, but even adults. I think there is digital marketing that's available for equipment like Peloton, for instance, where you see people getting on this, stationary bike, sweating beads and resulting in rock-hard abs, and that's, of course, something that adults would want, but it's not something that adults go ahead and order as soon as they've seen the commercial, but they do order food, and they do order junk food, and I think instant gratification has a very, very important role to play in all of that. How are we fighting instant gratification as we embark on this journey?
I think they're a bit more subtle than that. It isn't necessarily instant gratification by the consumption of the object. You can get gratification by liking the producer of the object. So you get to like the advert, and that means you like the brand, and you have warm feelings. Most of Coca-Cola's TV advertising is not expecting you to take a bottle immediately because you're in your home and you may not have access to it, but it is generating good feelings. It's about being happy in the world, about singing songs, about polar bears, all manner of things that make you feel good. And it's the feel-good association is all they want. They don't need anything more than that. Next time you're in a shop, you'll be going down the soft drinks aisle if you're stupid enough. But the thing that will jump out is the one that made you feel good. And that's the one that you'll stop and think, oh, I'll just take one, maybe the diet one. You know, so you buy.
Maybe it's the feel-good association then, but how are we fighting that?
How do we fight that?
How do we fight that as we embark on this journey?
Well, you know, we've got a number of tools. We're talking about which products are they allowed to advertise, what times are they allowed to advertise, whether we should completely ban any advertising to children under, well, what age, you know. So, you know, that's exactly the discussion today. What tools do we have available to try and counter the techniques that they're using? Tricky. Has anyone else got a view on
Thank
this?
you.
Kelly?
Thank you. We have two more questions, I guess, in the audience. So there's one over back there, and you also have one. Okay.
Louise Bauer, University of Sydney. Tim, I was wondering if you could just reflect a bit on the issue of taking a child's rights or a rights-based approach to tackling this issue. That the issue about the rights of the child was actually certainly part of the discussion at the Ending Childhood Obesity Commission from WHO, and I'm wondering if there is potential to really take this further, and do we have the right people that we're interacting with, i.e. lawyers, etc., to help us reframe some of these issues? Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is some mileage there. I think if you can get parents activated, as it were, then they can demand these protections. I'm very interested to see that in the British province of Wales, we have a new piece of legislation has arrived there. Oh, can I remember its name? Basically, it's about the sustainability of the environment, but they're actually writing into it the protection of the next generation. And so if you think about protection of the next generation, the health of the next generation, you actually have perhaps some additional opportunities. So they're now requiring all policies to be held to accountable to their impact on the next generation, which is fascinating. Their impact, not just sustainable impact, but sort of the impact down the line a bit. So I think there are ways in which we could, we need lawyers to help us generate these sorts of arguments and find opportunities. I think British Columbia in Canada also has a sort of a public health legislation which they haven't actually used sufficiently that allows them to ban processes or products that may affect health in a broader sense than we've usually used, and that would include advertising of junk food. They explicitly said that could include that. They haven't actually done it yet, but Canada generally is moving in that direction, which is exciting.
We have one question there at the bottom of the room, another one here, and here, and we only have 2 minutes. Then be very sharp with your questions, and Tim, please, with your answers as well. You'll be the last one then here. Okay. No, it's okay. Yes.
My name is Esther Schoiper.
Just a minute, I think the one behind you is first.
Sorry. My name is Paloma. I come from Mexico. So I guess my question is for all of you. Usually when we talk about advertising and we usually talk about junk food, right? We speak about sodas and we speak about chips and cookies, and most of them are being advertised for children, as we saw on all your presentations. But what happens when today the food industry has created a lot of products that are being sold as healthy, but they're not? Sometimes they actually have the same amount of sugar or salt or just not healthy ingredients as junk food, but we do not consider them as junk food. Actually, they are sold as healthy, or just, you know, creating this just propaganda. There are another thing that it's not considered junk food. Are we doing something about it? I mean, is that also being regulated, or it's just the things that all of us, I guess, know are considered junk food at first sight?
I'm not sure I can answer that, except that there's a nutrient profiling schemes, and particularly in the Pajo region, which Mexico is part of, there's a move towards defining ultra processed foods as being the enemy and not normally processed food. So bread is a normally processed food, but a pizza would be ultra-processed because it's a multiple combination of processed items. So that's an interesting distinction that might be helpful here. But basically, you're talking in most countries about risk assessment. So you have to show there is harm, show there is a risk. And that's quite tricky with something like bread, unless you can look specifically at salt or something like that.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. And we also have a nutrient profiling for the European region of the WHO as well. So next question there.
Hello, my name is Rana Saleh. I'm from the American University of Beirut, and I'm also a member of the Governance, Ethics, and Conflict of Interest in Public Health group. My question is not actually a question, it's a comment for all the speakers and even for the audience today. So thank you, Tim, for mentioning the below-the-line marketing strategies. I think one extra strategy is actually the sponsorship of the private food industry and the nutrition industry for the researchers and for activities and interventions within the public health field and public health and nutrition field. And most importantly is actually the use of corporate social responsibility in the wrong ways, if I can say the wrong ways, and even sponsoring researchers themselves. And what strikes me very much is that until this day and until having so many experts in this room and even WHO guidelines and WHO representatives here, we are still seeing conferences that are being sponsored by the private nutrition industry. Whether it's healthy or not healthy, however, the risks are still considered high. So if WHO can comment on this, or anyone, or even just raise the issue among the audience about conflict of interest and the importance of stopping this and controlling this, that would be very great. Thank you.
Thanks. Tim, you would like to comment on that?
Yeah, well, I've never been offered enough money by the industry to tempt me to become conflicted, so... it is a huge problem, and certainly the funding of university departments by food companies for their nutrition research is very dangerous, obviously, and undermining of good quality research. I think Kelly himself has shown in papers how the nature of the results of the research is influenced by the funders of that research, and that is, you know, basically science is corroded and undermined by the funding of it. What can we say, except, you know, all of us, it's down to our own struggles in our workplaces to resist the inducements by the food industry or others to take over our work program. Tricky.
In terms of the WHO, because I was asked the question as well, we do have internal rules and we have a framework for engagement with non-state actors, and we participating in conference and things like that, they follow, you know, the correct internal procedure. And, you know, this is very serious, your question, very important, and we have really to take that into account. We have the last question here.
Yeah, it's more of a comment. Thank you very much for your talk. It was very interesting, but I must say, the picture you've chosen, I find that very distracting. It's almost nauseating to me to see such a small child with fries, and I can understand showing it with one slide, but next time, please choose another picture.
Really? I put it there to challenge you, to make you think, why is that child reaching for those chips? I think it's...
Well, I know why, but for me it's very distracting from the subject of your talk. I mean, because it makes me ill thinking about that.
Well, in a sense, I want you to be disturbed.
Yeah,
so if
well,
you're
you succeeded, but...
Okay.
Yes, and on this note, on this challenge,
Thank you.
thank you very much. It's been very exciting. Thanks for attending.